today, and also we're grateful to all of you for the welcome that you've given. And although Father Jerry said that it's always better to have 2 Franciscans than 1, there's another part to that, which is when you have 2 Franciscans, you have 3 opinions. We'll see what happens after. We hear how these disciples of Jesus, on the first day of the week, were locked up in a room because of fear. And I wonder if you've ever experienced a fear as strong as that one which we just heard about. Locked up in the upper room because of fear, afraid to go out. As I reflected on that reality that St. John tells us about in his gospel, I thought of a couple of experiences that I've had where I knew of people who were so afraid, so full of fear, that they couldn't move. When I lived in another borough of New York City, Staten Island, and I worked at a psychiatric hospital, one of the patients with whom I worked suffered from agoraphobia. It's a diagnosis of fear of going outside, fear of leaving your home, fear of leaving your apartment. Can't leave that place which is comfortable because the fear is so great that something might go wrong. The fear is so great that the outside forces might make the inside psyche crumble. And this poor lady suffered for many, many years, not being able to leave her home. She couldn't move. Just like those apostles and disciples, on that first day of the week, that first Easter Sunday, who were locked up in that room. I remember talking to some other people who were full of fear. They were afraid to make decisions. And they were so afraid of making a mistake, or making a wrong decision, that they never made any decision. They were stymied. They were made immobile by their fears. And in a sense, that's what happened to the disciples of Jesus. They were petrified. They were stymied. They were immobilized because of their fears. But what's interesting to note about that first community of believers, those disciples of Jesus, is that they were missing a member on that first day of the week, 2 days, 3 days after the crucifixion. They were missing Thomas. Thomas, who always gets bad press. Thomas, who is always called the doubting one. And he was locked up in some of his own fears, but it didn't keep him from staying in the room. We know that he wasn't there, that he was outside. But where was Thomas? Have you ever thought about that? Where did he go? Why wasn't he with the other 10 apostles in that upper room? We know that after the crucifixion and death of Jesus, that all the apostles were together. We know that they were locked up there, and there were probably some others there as well. But why was not Thomas there? Why wasn't he as fearful as they? Were his fears different than the others? Was he absent because he was ready to kind of move on and go back to his former way of life? Where was Thomas? Why wasn't he there? What happened there without him? We know that when people have a lot of fear, that to get over the fear, you need a key. There has to be some kind of a key to help release us of those things that we're afraid of. For the patient of mine, the key for her was therapy, some behavior modifications, doing it little by little to lower her anxiety. For the disciples, the key to unleashing their fears was Jesus himself. Jesus, the risen one, who offered them peace. He broke through the locked doors. He came through those closed doors and offered them peace. We heard Father Jerry say that he said it 3 times. And he offered them the gift of his presence. And the reality of knowing Jesus, who shows us his wounds, who breathes on us his Holy Spirit, his peace, is the key to free not only those first disciples, but everyone of their fears, and offer us forgiveness of sins. Eventually, Thomas, who was out and about, would rejoin the group. And even though he rejoined the group, he still had some fears that kept him from acknowledging the fact that it really could be possible that this Jesus of Nazareth from Galilee could be the Messiah. And Jesus appears to him too, and to the group. 1 week later, that community of believers, that first group, were gathered again. And this time Thomas was there. And Jesus, once again, offers peace, both to him and to them. Today we celebrate Divine Mercy Sunday. It's now named Divine Mercy Sunday, the second Sunday of Easter. And we see that this divine mercy, who is Jesus himself, the risen one, offers peace and forgiveness and the strength of the Holy Spirit to Thomas, who had his doubts and questions, and to the disciples, so that they could be freed by accepting his peace, himself, he who is the key, and then become proclaimers of the resurrection. As you know, as you heard, Father Jerry invited me to come here and to preach this Mass and these Masses because of the new job that I've gotten, which was the job that he had many years ago. It could mean that he might get me in a few years when he's done. But the job he had, and the job I have now, is that of being the vocation director of our community. The one who shares the story of who the friars are. And look for people who will share this Franciscan way of life with us. As friars and women, as Franciscan sisters, and good committed lay people as members of the secular Franciscan order. The first reading that we heard proclaimed today talked about the community of believers, the first Christians, and what they were like. And some of the ones who were in that upper room that night were part of that group, locked up. That community of believers lived together. They held everything in common, and nothing was held onto as their own. And they prayed together, and they bore witness to the resurrection of Jesus. That Jesus, this gift of new life, Jesus is the key that unlocks the doors of our fears, and that Jesus is the one who invites us to probe his wounds, to find healing, and to find strength there. That's what Franciscans do. We try our best to live like that first community of believers. Those first people believed in the risen Jesus. And we live together in common as a group of brothers, and naturally Franciscan women as a group of sisters who hold everything in common. And that means that we, like those in the first reading, are a group where no one claimed that any of his possessions was his own, but that they held everything in common. All is held together. Things that are material and things that are not. This ministry, which Father Jerry has to live and share faith with you here at Elon University, isn't his. It's ours. It's shared. And today, with me, it's shared. And we share the message of the gospel, and in doing so, share the message of peace that Jesus shared on that first day of the week. Franciscans are called to be people of peace who try to unlock other people's doubts and fears. And St. Francis himself was known as the man of peace. That famous prayer, the peace prayer, Lord, make me an instrument of your peace, is attributed to St. Francis. And we know that Francis, as a man of peace, would even go to Egypt to see the Sultan during the Crusader Wars to try to make peace. And we Franciscans continue to do that, to be people of peace, to share the message of divine mercy, that Jesus is forgiveness, that Jesus is the key to freedom. People like yourself, who are students here at Elon, are usually, at this age, asking some life questions. Life questions which are really normal, and really natural, and really important to ask about for our own well-being. Questions like, what kind of community of believers do I wish to belong to? Will I be a member of the community a spouse and children? Will I be a member of a community of believers as a member of this universal and Catholic Church and share the gift of God's mercy and Jesus' peace with other community Christians? Or perhaps some of you might be questioning, is God calling me to join this community of believers called Franciscans? To be a brother or a sister, offering peace and the peace of Christ to others. Today, we're invited to allow Jesus to come into that locked part of our lives that might be a little fearful. And we're invited to allow Jesus' peace to calm us and strengthen us for his purpose in the world. We're invited to allow that divine mercy to overshadow us with God's goodness. So let's consider how God is calling us to be a member of the community of believers. And in this Eucharist, let's ask God to move the hearts of men and women, here and elsewhere, to walk the Franciscan